under 20 compared to vineyards is about 100, is that right?
Yes, that's the number of those surveyed.
So my question is, how much emphasis are you putting on your events as opposed to other general things, given that, you know, your events like the Big Easy and Fork and so on, they concentrate on, you know, 2 or 3 weekends a year, whereas like vineyards are open, you know, a lot longer than that, and people might...
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think, and we'll talk about events in a minute, but events do give people reasons to come, but often they're here for 3 or 4 days and they will then go and do wine. I think wine, you've got to remember this was asked to the tourism industry, so as a rule of thumb, I guess the easy option for them when asked by a customer, what can we do? Visiting a winery is probably a pretty easy thing to roll off the tongue. And it, you know, I think we have to take this, I think this is important, and that this is how our industry sees what we have, but doesn't mean to say that this is all that visitors do when they come here, but this is just how the industry plays this.
I think what it does highlight is that the 2 events that have been established are absolutely in tune with what people want to do here, which is about food, wine, weather, outdoors. So, and you need these. They're called tentpole events. So in other words, you pitch that they actually provide a focus. You can't keep people focused on the same thing all the time. So you need to bring them in at a particular point, and it just reinforces the branding of the region. So you can't sort of keep it there the whole time. That's why those events are so important. They keep it up.
I suppose from a business point of view, through you, Mr. Chair, those events are, you know, a couple of times a year, whereas they've got to fill their seats the rest of the year as well. But you know, there's
and that's you know,
a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and you know, that's our objective as well.
And through you, Mr. Chairman, that wouldn't represent the importance of, say, sporting events like age group competition and that sort of thing, which
no.
You know, if you were factoring that sort of thing in there, I would expect the events thing would be up quite a lot higher.
Yep. So just overall, I guess, you know, we have a pretty broad tourism sector, and as I've touched on, the just over 50% of accommodation in Napier. The one thing that did come out of the survey was that some of the capability of the tourism sector, we've got quite a lot of work to do in terms of ensuring that they're spending their money wisely. A lot of them, there was a 27% had sort of $10,000 marketing budget spends, but a lot of them weren't actually measuring their results. And that for us is, you know, in this day and age with online and digital, you can measure results pretty well, and we want to make sure that the industry's better equipped and more capable of doing so. So that's a good opportunity for us. And, you know, they are using multiple channels, and that's the internet these days. There are so many. You get hit up for 50 different websites. Oh, have your business listed on my site for 25% commission. And it's very hard to know which one's good and which one's bad.
Incidentally, Mr. Chairman, if that slide's being used to promote Art Deco, you should take account of the fact that the car is a 1955 MG
Thank you,
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor.
And is that hotel still called the Masonic?
Yes. Yeah. So just on the year ahead, if you want to flick to the next one, our wonderful one-page plan that puts it all nice and succinctly in for everyone to see. And we haven't, as George said, we're into the 3rd year of our mission, but having just completed the 2nd year. And so the goal does still remain getting visitors here now, doing more and spending money, and obviously coming back. In the centre of this, and the areas that we've changed a little bit and put a little more emphasis on are around sports events in our off-season, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And the idea of cultural tourism, with the PO launching last week in Hastings and some of the other activity that's happening in that area, we do believe there's some really nice elements around the cultural tourism that we can be helping and working on. And there's also some good development opportunities that we're talking to the team up in Wairoa around the lake and in Central Hawke's Bay. So there's some quite exciting projects on the go.
And Annie, can I just raise a question? You may cover it later. Looking at your strategic material, one of the things I don't see there, but it may be weaved through, is completely new products. And I don't mean events like Fork, which I think is very valuable, but more the destination stuff and influencing things to change, whether it's the Tamata Peak Visitor Centre or another marine land, perish the thought. But all I'm saying is, where does that sit within Hawke's Bay tourism or elsewhere to think about 5 years from now or 10 years from now? Because I think there's a lot of operational stuff you're talking about and all useful and important, but somewhere somebody's got to have a big picture, and I don't know where that now sits.
We have a view on it, but there's some great opportunities, but for us at this stage, and it's a resource issue, it requires quite a dedicated resource within the team to look at new product development. I mean, we have a pretty clear vision and plan of how we think the region we could look in 10, 15 years to service the visitor economy. And we're in full support of projects like Tamata Peak Visitor Centre and so on, because they give people reasons to come, like NTG reopening in a month or two. That is going to add a huge dimension back into the tourism product makeup for the region. But we don't, at this stage, have the resource to be looking at some of those bigger picture items, and it would be great if we did.
So would it be your assuming resource was available, would it be your view that it sits within?
It would make sense to sit within. Yeah.
So if somewhere a couple of million turned up, that you could make a difference.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of the bigger, longer term rather than the immediate, getting the people here tomorrow or next week or next year. But somebody's got to have ownership of that, and I don't quite see it up there. And you're saying it's in your thinking but not in your ability, capability in terms of resource. Okay.
Yeah.
Just to follow on from that, would it be a couple of million, or would you do, how much more could you do with another $250,000, for example?
I like Murray's. I think the important thing is at the moment we're operating as we are and achieving good results. You've got to say, well, what could you do with a bit more? And mostly it would be on promotion of Hawke's Bay. I mean, we just don't have enough gas in the tank to have a consistent Hawke's Bay promotional message year round. We do our best, and it's in lesser expensive channels such as online, but if we wanted to make more noise more consistently across the year, any money would go first and foremost into getting the message out there more so. And then I think you look at other areas. I mean, we are looking at China, and we don't have language resource in our team. We don't have someone that's dedicated at this point to it because we don't have the staffing, and we're going to need to have staff in that space for the longer term around the China market particularly. So and there's some fantastic opportunities with cycling and the Wairoa to Napier on the railway, and any other options along that route. And I mean, I'd love to see how we can get Waikaremoana as a more commercial walk and attraction within our offering. And there's lots of stuff out there, but it's just how we dedicate time and resource to it.
Just make a couple of comments in relation to that. And first of all, the comment made by the chair. The overheads of this organisation right now are probably lower than they were when we took it over. So the good thing about that is any additional money goes straight onto promotion, and that's what our aim is to get ourselves well positioned so that we can maximise the use of any additional funding, which we do need in order to promote the region. But to come back to the point you made about the vision, there's two parts to that. One is the resources to do it, and the other is the mandate. And we've, on occasions, held discussions with the other councils about a vision for the region's future of tourism, because there are things like what is the future of Marine Parade? what are the big things in the future that we want to engage in. And certainly we want to be part of that discussion and leading it if we can, but we do need to be given the mandate to do that. So as part of that, clearly one of the things that we've been doing is looking at the vision for tourism that would be included in the prosperity study that this council is doing. And hopefully in the future there is a more unified acceptance that the work that we've started here could then become a platform for building a stronger vision for tourism for this region that all parties are part of. But without that immediate commitment, like we struggle to even get strong funding from other parties, let alone owning their vision for the tourism in their region. So, but it does need to happen eventually, and I think you quietly work your way towards it, and we've started. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. What about music concerts and so on? Because that's a pretty big area here, isn't it?
Yeah.
Does that fit into...
Oh, it comes under events, generally.
Okay, because you've got events, sports and...
Yeah, we've pulled out sports because what the sporting arena is, it's an area that particularly helps the off-season. So sports tournaments and school-age groups, etc., they come for 5 days with parents, and a lot of that is in the winter, and that's an area that we want to focus on. But just on the next... Can I get you to shoot through the next one? So just really quickly, the 5 things just to pull out of that strategic plan for us as top line. Domestic tourism is still the number one activity, and I guess most of our spend goes towards promoting Hawke's Bay within New Zealand, and that will continue. Events obviously are massive, and great news yesterday in terms of Hawke's Bay or Napier McLean Park hosting 3 of the Cricket World Cup matches in March of 2015, the Black Caps, the West Indies and Pakistan, so plus the teams they're playing, so fantastic result for the region. So events, as I said, off-season, and we've got some new criteria around events, and it is around visitor nights. We are trying to establish a bit more of a fighting fund so that we can influence dates around events. So if there's a way that we can move events into slightly slower, quieter periods, that we will. So we're working pretty closely on that with Hastings Council and Napier and Sport Hawke's Bay. The other piece of our sort of vision and plan is around technology. We have to be responsive to how visitors use technology and how they seek information. And yep, we've got a great website and it's mobile and it does all those things, but visitors are continually using new apps, new ideas, new social channels to pick and choose destinations, and obviously when they're on the ground we want to make sure that we're selling more and they're spending more money in the region. So technology is a big piece of where we're headed and how we're looking. We've got a cycle picture up there, and obviously the trails for us are an essential anchor of our domestic marketing activity, and we're working pretty closely with Drew and the team here on the steering group around how we can obviously extend the message about what Hawke's Bay offers. And the Big Easy is just one example of an event that sits within the cycle trails promotion, and that will obviously continue. And the other piece on there is China, and we are in a development plan stage for China. It's certainly not going to be a quick fix or a quick win. We're sort of seeing it as a 3-year plan. We plan to visit Shanghai in October as part of a very large Tourism New Zealand mission to train agents, about 50-60 Chinese product managers, about Hawke's Bay and what we have and what we can deliver to that upper sort of semi-independent FIT Chinese traveller. So we are dabbling in that space. Just to put it slightly in perspective, at the moment of a fairly large China travel market to New Zealand, only 20 to 30% of those are travelling away from Rotorua and Auckland. But within 3 years, that number could be closer to 100,000. So that's a slightly more realistic picture, and obviously Hawke's Bay, we want Hawke's Bay to be part of that. Just on the proposed membership changes, and this is just to sort of keep you in the loop in terms of where we're at. We are in our last year of funding, and we've got 210 members, and they're pretty happy. But we are looking at ways of how we broaden our membership to a far broader base. You would have seen that we sent our survey to 800 odd people in the tourism sector, and so there's a lot of them out there that currently aren't connected in with what we're doing as much as perhaps they should be. So the idea behind changes is having a more inclusive environment for membership. We also want a sustainable model going forward, and a far broader group to engage with. And I hope you can read this, but what we're planning to do is open up our membership to all and sundry. So basically, of our list of 850, they would all automatically become a member of the tourism industry, and if they choose not to have that title, then they can opt out. But the next level is how we, I guess, get those that are a little more engaged at a more reasonable price than we've been charging. So there's a $250 fee to get pretty much a web listing on hawkesbaynz.com, and then we move up in terms of tiers, in terms of what we offer and service. And the nice thing is we have sent this out to the industry, and the feedback to date has been really positive. Many of our partners who are already paying $550 are like, brilliant, charge me again. That's exactly what we want to do. But what it's done is it's probably opened up our membership at that $250 level to a far broader group of operators who are perhaps a little bit more part-time. Some of the B&B network are delighted with this because they haven't been able to stretch to that slightly higher sum, so they'll come in and sit at that $250 level. And so we're pretty pleased with how that's working, and then we've just put a bit more structure around those that want to work in the domestic campaign space, and then we have an international tier which has already been in existence for quite a long time, so there's no increase in fees for people in that space, but it just wraps it up a bit more tidily in terms of an international profile. So what we feel with this is that we will get our an increased membership fund back, and obviously our pledge money runs out at the end of this year, and we are going to be talking to some of our key stakeholders in that pledge category to see if they would like to come back and be a partner of Hawke's Bay Tourism, but on different terms, obviously, to add more value to their businesses. So we've got a bit of work to do in the meantime. But this is just a proposed change. The industry will vote on it in September, and we're just getting feedback in at the moment. So any comments would be greatly appreciated.